Today I'm talking about the different types of horror in literature. Horror isn't just about jump scares and gore. It's a rich genre with many distinct flavors of fear. Let's explore these subgenres and discover what makes each one unique. Hi everyone, I'm Razu and this is RazuTales. On this channel I make videos about books and do deep dives into horror and fantasy. If you're new to the channel, welcome. If you appreciate the video, consider hitting the like and subscribe button to join our community of book lovers. Now, let's get started. First of all, remember that these subgenres often overlap. Many great horror works combine elements from multiple categories. Think of these as different ingredients that authors can mix to create their own special blend of nightmare fuel. Let's start with Gothic Horror, the grandfather of all horror subgenres. Gothic Horror is all about atmosphere, crumbling castles, family curses, dark secrets, and psychological torment. Think of vast, decaying mansions hiding terrible secrets, aristocratic families with dark histories, and innocent protagonists drawn into webs of mystery and danger. Gothic horror often features a romance element, but it's usually troubled or dangerous, love that destroys rather than saves. If you enjoyed the film Crimson Peak by Guillermo del Toro or Netflix's The Haunting of Bly Manor, you'll feel right at home in Gothic horror. These stories excel at creating a sense of decay beneath beauty, of rot behind wealth and privilege. Take Daphne du Maurier's Rebecca, for example.
Last night, I dreamt I went to Manderley again. Nature had come into her own again, and little by little, in her stealthy, insidious way, had encroached upon the drive with long, tenacious fingers.
This opening sets up everything Gothic horror does best. A haunting atmosphere, a sense of decay, and the weight of the past tearing down on the present. Gothic horror tells us that our past sins will always come back to haunt us. Next up is psychological horror, which plays with your mind rather than showing explicit threats. This subgenre is all about making you question reality itself. Is the protagonist really experiencing something supernatural, or are they losing their mind? Are they being haunted by ghosts or by their own past trauma? The best psychological horror leaves you uncertain about what's real and what isn't, making you feel as unbalanced as the characters themselves. If you were captivated by movies like Black Swan or Get Out, or found yourself theorizing about the true nature of reality in WandaVision, psychological horror might be your next literary obsession. One of the finest examples is Shirley Jackson's The Haunting of Hill House, which inspired both the 1963 film The Haunting and the recent Netflix series. Listen to this passage.
No live organism can continue for long to exist sanely, under conditions of absolute reality. Even larks and katydids are supposed by some to dream. Hill House, not sane, stood by itself against its hills, holding darkness within. It had stood so for 80 years, and might stand for 80 more. Within, walls continued upright, bricks met neatly, floors were firm, and doors were sensibly shut. Silence lay steadily against the wood and stone of Hill House, and whatever walked there, walked alone.
Jackson makes you question what's real and what isn't. Is the house haunted, or is it all in the protagonist's mind? That uncertainty is what makes psychological horror so effective. It makes you doubt your own sanity. Cosmic horror, which we've discussed before in quite some detail, deals with the terror of the unknown and unknowable. This subgenre suggests that the universe is vast, incomprehensible, and completely indifferent to humanity. It's not that the cosmos wants to destroy us, it's that we're so insignificant it doesn't even notice us. Cosmic horror often features scientists or scholars who discover something that they were never meant to know, leading to madness or worse. If you found yourself fascinated by the mysterious interdimensional horror of Stranger Things, captivated by the unsettling mysteries of True Detective Season 1, or loved the way Annihilation made you question the nature of reality itself, cosmic horror will be right up your alley. Here's Thomas Ligotti showing how it's done in Teatro Grotesco.
There is nothing to do, and there is nowhere to go. There is nothing to be, and there is no one to know.
See how different this is from Gothic or psychological horror? Cosmic horror tells us that we are insignificant specks in an uncaring universe, and some truths are too terrible for our minds to handle. Now for something completely different, body horror. This subgenre explores our fear of our own flesh, of transformation and decay. It plays on our anxiety about disease, mutation, and loss of bodily control. Body horror reminds us that we're trapped in these vulnerable meat suits and anything could go wrong at any time. The horror comes not just from the grotesque transformations, but from the way they strip away our humanity and control over our own forms. Viewers simultaneously disgusted and fascinated by The Thing, couldn't look away from The Fly, or found yourself disturbed yet intrigued by the body transformations in Stranger Things Season 4, body horror might be your next favorite genre. Clive Barker's Books of Blood gives us this delightfully disturbing passage.
The body is a book of blood. Wherever we're opened, we're read.
Body horror reminds us that we are all just meat and bones, vulnerable to corruption and transformation. It plays on our fear of losing control over our own physical form. Folk horror taps into ancient fears, old traditions, and rural isolation. This subgenre often deals with the clash between modern urban life and ancient rural traditions, suggesting that beneath our civilized veneer, old gods and older ways still hold power. Folk horror typically features isolated communities, pagan rituals, and the sense that progress is an illusion. The old ways were never really gone, just waiting. If you were entranced by Midsummer, couldn't stop thinking about the witch, or found yourself drawn into the folk mysteries of the Terror, specifically Season 2, then folk horror literature will give you exactly the kind of ancient dread you're looking for. Adam Neville's The Ritual perfectly captures this.
The forest had eyes. The forest had claws, and it had teeth.
Folk horror reminds us that sometimes the old ways, the old gods, and the old fears never really went away. They're just waiting in the dark corners of the world. Supernatural horror might be what most people think of when they think horror. This subgenre deals with ghosts, demons, vampires, and other supernatural entities. But the best supernatural horror uses these creatures to explore human nature. It's not just about the ghost, it's about why the ghost is there. What unresolved human drama keeps it tethered to our world. Great supernatural horror uses the paranormal to illuminate the normal. If you binged The Haunting of Hill House on Netflix, got pulled into the family drama in Hereditary, or found yourself invested in the complex supernatural world of Supernatural, then this genre offers countless literary treasures. Stephen King's The Shining shows why it works so well.
This inhuman place makes human monsters.
What makes supernatural horror effective isn't just the ghosts or demons, it's how they interact with human nature and human weakness. Don't overlook quiet horror. This subgenre proves that whispers can be more terrifying than screams. Quiet horror builds dread through suggestion and implication rather than explicit threats. It's about the creeping sensation that something is wrong, even if you can't quite put your finger on what. These stories often focus on small personal moments of horror that slowly build to devastating revelations. If you appreciated the subtle dread of The Others, the quiet menace of A Dark Song, or the slow building tension of The Lighthouse, then quiet horror literature will give you the same delicious sense of mounting unease. Robert Eichmann, master of the strange story, shows how subtlety can be terrifying.
The more we explain, the more we create confusion.
Quiet horror is about suggestion rather than revelation, the slow build of unease rather than the sudden shock. Finally, let's look at contemporary literary horror. This exciting subgenre blends horror elements with literary fiction techniques to explore social issues, identity, and human relationships. Literary horror often experiments with form and structure, using horror elements as metaphors for real-world issues like racism, sexism, or climate change. These stories tend to be more concerned with what monsters mean than what they are. If you were blown away by Get Out or Us, appreciated the social commentary in Lovecraft Country, or found yourself thinking deeply about the platform's metaphors, contemporary literary horror offers similar depths with its scares. Carmen Maria Machado's Her Body and Other Parties show how modern authors are pushing the boundaries.
I fear no fate, for you are my fate, my sweet. I want no world, for beautiful you are my world, my true.
Literary horror often blends genres, challenging conventions, and uses horror elements to explore social issues and human relationships. What makes horror so fascinating is how these different genres tap into different fears. Gothic horror plays on our fear of the past. Psychological horror exploits our fear of our own minds. Cosmic horror tackles our fear of the unknown. Body horror addresses our fear of our own flesh. Folk horror draws on our fear of ancient traditions. Supernatural horror deals with our fear of what lies beyond. Quiet horror builds on our fear of subtle wrongness. And literary horror often combines these fears into social commentary. If you're new to horror, here's where I suggest starting with each subgenre. You can also find a more thorough list over on my blog, where I also recommend you join the mailing list. Gothic horror, Rebecca by Daphne du Maurier. Psychological horror, The Haunting of Hill House by Shirley Jackson. Cosmic horror, Annihilation by Jeff Vandermeer. Body horror, The Troop by Nick Cutter. Folk horror, The Ritual by Adam Neville. Supernatural horror, Ghost Story by Peter Straub. Quiet horror, Cold Hand in Mind by Robert Eichmann. Literary horror, The Only Good Indians by Stephen Graham Jones. What's your favorite type of horror? Let me know in the comments below. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and remember, whatever scares you, there's probably a whole subgenre dedicated to it. See you in the next chapter.